Christopher Nolan just spent 3 years and a reported budget north of $250 million on a movie about a guy trying to get home. And somewhere inside that massive production, he hit a tribute so small, so quiet, that most people watching it in theaters this week are going to miss it completely. It's not a cameo. It's not an Easter egg you need a frame-by-frame breakdown to catch. It's a single character trait. One actor, one choice, and it changes how an entire relationship in this story works. Let's get into it. So if you don't know the setup, here's the short version. The Odyssey is Homer's follow-up to the Iliad, written somewhere around the 8th century BCE, and it's basically the original road trip movie. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, wins the Trojan War, then spends the next 10 years trying to sail home. Along the way, he fights a cyclops, gets seduced by a witch, sails past monsters, and generally has the worst commute in literary history. Nolan's adaptation hits theaters July 17th, and the cast list alone is enough to make a film nerd's head spin. Matt Damon as Odysseus, and Hathaway as his wife Penelope, Tom Holland as his son Telemachus, Zendaya as the goddess Athena, Charlize Theron as Circe, Robert Pattinson playing one of the suitors circling Penelope like a vulture. The whole thing was shot on IMAX film across 5 countries, including actual Viking ship footage in Scotland, because apparently regular boats weren't epic enough for this director. But buried in that cast list is a name a lot of casual moviegoers might skip past. John Leguizamo, playing a character called Eumaeus. Now, if you didn't read the Odyssey in school, or if you did and forgot everything except Beware of Sirens, Eumaeus might not ring a bell. He's Odysseus's swineherd, literally the guy who takes care of the pigs. He sounds like a background character. He is not. In Homer's original text, Eumaeus is one of the most quietly important people in the entire story. While Penelope is stalling suitors and Telemachus is off searching for news of his father, Eumaeus is the one person on Ithaca who never stops believing Odysseus is coming back. When Odysseus finally does return home in disguise, it's Eumaeus' hut where he stays first. It's Eumaeus who unknowingly shelters his own king and doesn't even realize it. Scholars have pointed out that his loyalty functions almost like a moral compass for the whole back half of the poem. Everyone else has doubts. He doesn't. Here's where the Nolan version gets interesting. In an interview with Screen Rant, Leguizamo revealed that in this adaptation, Eumaeus is blind. That is not in Homer's original poem. In the source material, Eumaeus can see just fine. So why change it? According to Leguizamo, the answer traces back to Homer himself. There's a persistent legend, dating all the way back to classical antiquity, that Homer was blind. The idea shows up early. There's a passage in another ancient work, the Homeric Hymn to Apollo, describing a blind poet from the island of Chios, and ancient audiences connected that description directly to Homer. Sculptures and busts made centuries after his death frequently depict him with closed or empty eyes. It became part of the mythology of the man himself. This idea that the greatest storyteller in the Western tradition couldn't actually see the world he was describing. Most historians today think this is almost certainly just legend. There's no reliable biographical record of Homer at all. We don't even know for certain that a single person wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, let alone what he looked like or whether he had a disability. The blindness story likely grew out of a broader ancient tradition connecting blindness with poetic and prophetic insight, a kind of he can't see the physical world, so he must see something deeper trope. You see it again with the prophet Tiresias inside the Odyssey itself, who is also blind and also more perceptive than everyone around him. So Nolan and his writers took that legend and folded it into Eumaeus. Leguizamo described it directly, saying Nolan told him Eumaeus is the most loyal character in Western literature, and that giving him blindness ties him symbolically to Homer while also deepening his faith. Leguizamo's own phrase for it was blind faith, and once you hear that, the character choice basically explains itself. This isn't just a physical difference for flavor. It's the entire theme of the character, made literal. A man who cannot see for himself whether Odysseus is alive keeps every promise anyway. He tends the pigs. He keeps the dog fed. He tells Telemachus stories about his father. He argues with anyone who suggests the king might be dead. None of that requires eyesight. It requires conviction. There's something almost sneaky smart about this. Nolan didn't need to add a scene explaining Yumi's loyalty. He didn't need 3 extra minutes of dialogue about how devoted this guy is. He just made him blind, and the loyalty becomes visible without a single line of exposition. That efficient filmmaking, and it's also exactly the kind of layered detail Nolan tends to hide throughout his movies, the kind that rewards people paying close attention. It also raises a question worth sitting with for a second. Does this change ripple outward? In Homer's text, Eumaeus isn't just a passive believer. He physically participates in the climax of the story. He helps Odysseus and Telemachus during the confrontation with the suitors, arming himself and fighting alongside them. If Nolan's version keeps him blind through the whole film, that final sequence has to be handled differently than it was 3,000 years ago. Neither Nolan nor Leguizamo has confirmed exactly how that plays out, so we'll have to wait for the film itself to find out. One more detail worth mentioning, because it's a strange little footnote to this whole story. Reports earlier this summer revealed that Nolan's marketing team built an AI voice for promotional purposes modeled after Michael Caine's narration style, used to introduce the film in certain formats. It's a small, almost ironic detail sitting next to a story about honoring a poet whose entire legacy survived purely through human memory and oral tradition, long before writing was even widespread in Greece. The Odyssey wasn't written down for potentially centuries after it was first composed. It was recited, memorized, passed voice to voice. There's something worth thinking about in a film paying tribute to an oral storyteller while also experimenting with synthetic narration to promote itself. Leguizamo isn't exactly starved for work this year either. Beyond this role, he's reprising Sid the Sloth in the next Ice Age film, and he's got a part in Mike Flanagan's upcoming Exorcist project. But by his own account, Eumaeus is shaping up to be one of the more meaningful roles of his career, largely because of how much weight Nolan put on the character's symbolic role before filming even started. The Odyssey opens in theaters July 17th, with preview screenings the night before. If this small, deliberate tribute to Homer is any indication of how much thought went into the rest of the adaptation, this might be one of those movies where the real story is in the details nobody points out to you. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If you've read the Odyssey, or even just watched previous adaptations, which character are you most curious to see reinterpreted? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more breakdowns like this before the film actually releases, you know what to do. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.